At best, Misako is considered one of the least popular characters in all of Ninjago. At worst, people absolutely detest the fact that she exists. And whilst the opinions as to why they don't like Misako will always vary, the thing is that there is some very consistent arguments when it does come to a character. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I initially set out for this video to defend Misako, when in reality, it is very difficult to do so. So for this video, we are going to analyze the actions of Misako. We are going to take a look at what she does within the universe of Ninjago and attempt to defend and see it from her perspective, but ultimately answer the question of whether or not Misako is a bad mother. But before we do get into it, I do want to know one thing before I attempt to sway the argument. Do you like the character of Misako? Do you think she's a good or a bad mother? And I would love to know why. And also let me know if there are any other Ninjago characters you would like me to look into in this light. And also if you do enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. But let me not waste any more of your time, and let's talk about Misako. There are three main criticisms when it does come to Misako. Like I said, there are always going to be extending factors dependent on who you talk to, but like I said, there seems to be these three specific arguments when it does come to the character. The first major talking point when it comes to Misako is how she actually ended up abandoning Lloyd. The thing is that she dropped him off at Darkly's boarding school for bad boys, which is notorious for the fact that they are just straight up evil kids. So Misako willingly left her own son at a place where he would be destined to become evil. And I'm gonna be honest, there's not much of a defense for this one, but there is, in my opinion, a very loose explanation as to why Misako may have actually have done it. The thing is that people cite this reason as, oh, she clearly didn't care about Lloyd. She did it just because she wanted to get rid of Lloyd. She didn't care about the consequences, she just simply decided that that was going to be the place that he would end up being. But in a really twisted way, I think I understand why she did it. I think she ultimately did send Lloyd to a school that would turn kids evil because it may actually prevent the Green Ninja prophecy. Remember, her whole point was that she was always trying to prevent Lloyd from having to face his father. The whole balance of good versus evil would come to head between the father and the son, and she simply just didn't want to see that. So what if in her own twisted logic, she decided that turning Lloyd evil may actually make them no longer fight? If they both sat on the same side of the balance, would they ultimately even end up fighting because they're technically not each other's enemy? I know it's a really bad way of looking at it, but the thing is that Misako didn't understand the fact that she couldn't prevent destiny. She always tried to do it when she knew she couldn't, because ultimately speaking, Lloyd still did become evil, but he still defected back to the good side and became the Green Ninja. It was all for nothing ultimately, but I genuinely believe Misako thought she could have done it just by making Lloyd evil. Which is really ironic, because her doing this also meant Lloyd released the Serpentine, and if you know my What If series, which if you haven't seen, you should definitely go and do so, I did one where I talked about Lloyd not actually opening up the Serpentine, and that one event being changed so many of the future events. So a lot of people cite Lloyd as the reason why a lot of Ninjago happened, when in reality, it was actually kind of Misako in a really weird way. But to get back to the point, a lot of people, like I said, believe that Misako is an inherently flawed character because she tried to make Lloyd evil because she sent him to an evil school. And whilst I have given some form of defense to this, the thing is that there were still so many other options that Misako could have explored when it does come to sending Lloyd off somewhere. Of course, she does express remorse, and she does say that she didn't want to send Lloyd to that school, but the thing is that she still did it, and she definitely still would have had other options. She wouldn't have been in any sort of state of emergency. She wouldn't have needed to rush to have sent Lloyd off, because ultimately she had time to actually look into the prophecy. It just seems to be that she actively chose that spot. And like I said, she definitely did have other options. A lot of people have cited those options. He could have been sent to a boarding school that would have been for good children. Simply put, it's the exact same place, just not making the kids evil. He could have been put up for adoption. That could have been another option. He could have ended up in the hands of Ed and Edna for all we knew. Or Misako could have just simply have given Lloyd off to Wu. Like, there are multiple options when it does come to what she could have done, and people have given reasons as to why that may have not have been the case. And like I said, my explanation as to why she may have thought making Lloyd evil would have been a good thing is still a factor, but the fact is that Misako definitely did have many options, and a lot of people cite that as a reason why Misako is a bad character. So I have to say, in regard to the first argument, whilst there is by all accounts a defense, I don't think this action is excusable by any account. I do think this was fairly negligent of Misako, and I can't really allow the explanation that I have given. If you believe that explanation, then I'm glad I showed a different perspective. But personally speaking, if her belief was she could make Lloyd evil and that would prevent the prophecy, I don't know what else you could really do for her. But that's the first argument when it does come to Misako, and as it stands, I do believe she was a bad mother. The second talking point when it does come to Misako is what she did after she left Lloyd at Darkly's. She never attempts to contact Lloyd. She never interacts with him in any way. We know this for a fact. And I'm gonna be honest again, this is a very difficult one to excuse. But again, in a really weird and twisted sense, you could actually give a reason as to why there was no contact between the two. The thing is that because of Lloyd being in a school for evil children, there may have been some sort of dampener on contact. There may have been some sort of way that Misako could never have actually been able to speak to Lloyd whilst he was in the school. We never really get outright confirmation on how Darkly's actually works. But the thing is that Misako never actually cites trying to contact Lloyd or ever tries to attempt to reach out to him in any way. There's no confirmation of her actually doing that. So we can assume that she just simply never actually tried. But that's the thing, if she never tried, then there's not really an excuse for this. The thing is that I have no doubt that even though Darkly's was a school for evil kids, they definitely were able to speak to their actual parents. So if Misako just simply never bothered, then I don't really know how else you can spin it in any sort of way. Again though, of course she will cite the fact that she was just trying to learn everything she could about the prophecy. She was just trying to do her best, and she was trying to figure out any way that she could prevent what was destined to happen. But that doesn't mean you have to ignore your son for 8 years. To be perfectly honest, this one is the most clean-cut example of Misako just simply being a bad mother. There's not really any other excuse you can give. There's not really any sort of reason you can apply. The thing is that she just simply never tried to speak to her son for 8 years. Again, I understand what she was trying to do, it's just how she went about it. But this does then bring us to the last of the major points when it does come to Misako, and this is the most difficult one of the bunch. I feel like this is the one that is the most down the middle when it does come to people's opinions on her, and that is how she ultimately went about how she went with Wu. A lot of people say she's just an inherently flawed and kind of selfish character, because when she's back in Lloyd's life, and when she's established back in Lloyd's life, you will actually see that she hits on Wu, she flirts with Wu. I think she even flirts with Wu when Garmadon is good, and the thing is that she holds no remorse for what she's actually doing. And you may say, if that's between the two of them, then that's that. But the thing is that we have scenes of the two of them flirting with each other right in front of Lloyd. And this is by far one of the most difficult ones to actually navigate, because it doesn't seem like Lloyd inherently does have an issue with Misako and Wu having a romantic relationship. I mean, there are scenes where he outright acknowledges it, and he seemingly does approve of it. And the thing is that there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But the thing is that she kind of did it unapologetically. I feel like she was doing it regardless of how she felt about what Lloyd would have thought about it. And beyond that whole point, there is still the argument that you could give in defense of Misako. The thing is that throughout the course of the show, Misako and Wu separately have always remarked about the fact that they should have picked each other. Misako in particular did express, honestly, doubt and kind of remorse about the fact that she did ultimately pick Garmadon. So they were clearly somewhat meant to be. The thing is that ultimately she only ends up with Garmadon because Garmadon cheated and took Wu's letter. So you could make a reasoning as to why the fact that her doing it is completely fine. The only outright situation where she is wrong is, like I said, where she kind of implies to be flirtatious with Wu during season 4 in front of Garmadon. Of course, it's after the whole thing of Misako realizing that the letter was actually from Wu, and they do have some really weird interactions after that point. And in my opinion, that is kind of where you should draw the line. Like, I think that is inherently bad from Misako, and I don't think there is any excuse in that. But like I said, in every other instance, it's honestly kind of difficult to declare her a bad character. Because like I said, when I was looking at the point as to why people don't care for Misako, a lot of people do cite the fact that Lloyd had to witness his mother flirting with his uncle. But again, like I said, Lloyd seemingly weirdly approves of it, so I don't really want to give that as a negative aspect. So that's why when it does come to this third point, I'm not really mad. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. I don't think it makes her a bad character. If that's what her and Wu decides, then that's just kind of what they decide. I don't know. Does this excuse all the other things that she did? No, not at all, because the only point I'm able to defend her on is the point that doesn't relate to her really being a mother. But those are the three major talking points when it does come to Misako. The thing is that all of them do have their ups and their downs, all of them have their attacks and all of them have their defenses, and I do think that is very interesting to see. I do think there are other points to Misako that not a lot of people talk about. For example, a major one for me was always in the episode where she does get introduced, where they're going about the museum. The thing is that she talks to Lloyd like she almost expects Lloyd to be okay with what she was doing. The thing is that she remarks to Lloyd that she was just trying to do what was best. She acts like Lloyd's feelings didn't really matter in the situation, and I think that is something that always resonated with me as being just kind of inherently wrong. Because that is the ultimate talking point I want to bring to the table before I do make my conclusion. I personally think Misako never really considered Lloyd's feelings. I think she expressed remorse for how she treated Lloyd, but I ultimately don't think she ultimately cared. Like I said, she always cited the fact that she was just trying to prevent the prophecy, and she was trying to learn all that she could, and she even said that she had no choice. The thing is that she doesn't express actual remorse. She doesn't express any sort of sympathy for how Lloyd felt. And I do think that is the biggest point for me, and honestly what did dictate my solution, or more importantly my conclusion, when it does come to Misako. Because in the end, Misako is a bad mother. Misako is a bad character. She is inherently flawed. I don't think her relationship with Wu is an ultimate factor, but I think how she treated her son throughout the course of the show is definitely detestable at best. I do have my arguments for her defenses, and that is why I don't think she is the worst character that has ever existed in Ninjago. To be perfectly honest, I don't know who I would give that title to, but I do think considering her in-universe actions, how she handled the situation with Lloyd, how she handled the entire of his life basically, I really do think she went at it the complete wrong way. And I do think my last point of she didn't really express remorse about what she did is the ultimate nail in the coffin. If she felt as reluctant as she wanted to describe, I would actually feel a little more sympathetic towards her. But the thing is that whilst her words were saying one thing, her actions were saying the complete opposite. What's the solution when it comes to Misako in universe? I don't know, be a better mother? I don't really know what else there really is to it. But the thing is that just, like I said, on a conclusion, I really do think Misako is kind of what a lot of people describe her to be. I really do think she is inherently flawed, and I don't really think she acknowledges that fact. I think that is the biggest crime of all. It's the fact that she simply doesn't acknowledge what she did. But this is where I'm going to pass it off to you guys. Like I said at the start of the video, do you like Misako as a character? Do you think she is worthy of the title of most hated Ninjago character? Do you think she's a lot more better than a lot of people say that she is? Do you think she's worse than people say that she is? I would love to know what you do think. Because personally speaking, like I said, I initially set out in this video to defend her. I really did think I was going to go to her defense. But the more I looked into her, the more I realized what people were on about. I don't think she deserves the title of most hated because I don't hate any Ninjago characters. But the thing is that I really understand why she's disliked. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys think. And thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would love to have more people to talk about Ninjago with. And if you do want to support the channel further, which you don't have to, you could join the Legends. The channel membership is honestly really just a good way to support the channel if you simply want to. On screen are some of the legends, and I want to give an eternal shout out to Grandmaster Sensei 28208. Thank you very much, my friend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!